So, when it comes to parenting, especially during COVID, many of us are relying on devices more than ever before. And many of us are totally thankful for things like Zoom and Skype, which allows us to do homeschooling sometimes. I facilitate a little girls' book club, and it's allowed us to stay connected with some great literature, which I love. Yet, I wonder about the potentials, and I'm hearing from parents, some of them are also wondering, are there potential dangers? Is there too young a time for children to have cell phones or to be on social media platforms? So is it bad? Is it good? I guess that's what we want to know. And Susie, you're here with me today to help us find out and dive into this subject. Before we do so, let me just introduce you so those listening can get a sense of who you are. So Susie Raisch is a national speaker and founder of tangledball.com. It's a bullying, cyberbullying prevention and leadership resource. She's also the author of, I love this name, Superheroes Wear Mom Jeans. And so I know you bring a really unique perspective to this, especially with your over 25 years experience, having worked in television with networks such as Nickelodeon, HBO, and Sesame Street. So Susie, I want to start out, first of all, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me.
Thanks, Kelly.
And I'd love to start out just getting your sense is, should we be concerned? Is there too early an age for a child to have a phone or use, apps such as TikTok and even other social media platforms?
Well, as you know, I love to call this era that we're in, I love to call it the new neighborhood. And so it is sort of a gray area for preteens. It is, I think, in general, a good neighborhood, just like you described. Some great things happen in this neighborhood, some great connectivity, even education, entertainment, fun. But there are some dark alleys, and we just have to help our children navigate through those dark alleys. When I was writing my book, I interviewed a woman by the name of Dr. Patty Agatston, and she's a international, really, cyberbullying expert. She said, this is a time to ask yourself some questions. She said, the questions are, is your child ready? Is your child mature enough? Are you ready? Is your child getting enough physical exercise? Do they know how to respect themselves? Do they know how to respect others? If you're co-parenting, is the other parent on the same page as you are about it? Or even, are you feeling pressure from other parents to start letting your child, have more independence online? So I think these are really important questions to ask. I think this is in particular a really tough time because parents may want to give their child access to a cell phone or, more apps and platforms to stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those questions are very important to ask, because if you're not comfortable with that, then really think about it. The parents that I talk to that have waited do not regret waiting, because once you give a child a device, it's very hard, to take it back.
So I'm one of the parents that waited probably a long time. I totally don't regret it. And I think, like Tyler, he's now 14. He was the last in his class for sure, but I'm really glad that I waited. So what else do we need to know in terms of navigating? I know that you have, I think, 3 ideas for us today.
So one is to do your homework, and to do your homework first, and actually look into, just guidelines for using a cell phone. For example, if a child wants to be on a social media platform, what is the minimum age? Most of the time that age is 13, but that age has nothing to do with maturity. It's, Facebook is not saying you can be on Facebook at 13 because you're old enough and wise enough. It's basically saying that there's a minimum age there because of the COPA, because of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
And do you also, I know a dear friend of mine, she's in the movie industry. And so she's quite on her game when it comes to social media, but I was so impressed. I know when her oldest now was around 11, 10, she started using Instagram, and it wasn't for her. it was because her child was interested in it and she really wanted to know what it was. So she actually started an account first before letting him go on. And I think she was connected with her niece. What I loved about it is she was getting a really good sense of everything possibly that they could be exposed to. So I think also that can take the unknown away as well, for good and for bad. But at least you can have richer conversations that you're not in the dark and just have no idea. Because, you know, you use that new neighborhood analogy. It's like at certain ages, I'm not going to let my child go anywhere in the city or anywhere in our town alone without me having gone there first.
No, exactly. And I love that idea because then it's a partnership. And, you know, we want to, you know, and one of my tips is, you know, being a good go-to adult and a good role model. And when you're doing it together, you're able to witness. And I think that's just a fantastic thing. And I think that it makes the child feel important. You're not saying no or that you don't trust the child, but it is, you know, dipping your toe and still being in charge, but you know, it's and plus it's probably fun and connecting. And I think it's wonderful. You know, I have just a quick story myself. I was talking to a very close friend of mine. We were sitting around having coffee and her daughter was with us and she was about 12 at the time. And my friend was saying, I see nothing wrong with her having her own Facebook account. So I said, oh, you know, Julie, you're here, you know, let's take a tour. Do you mind taking us, you know, your mom and I for a tour of your Facebook page? She had no problem with it. And so when she started to go through it, this little girl realized that friends were posting things that were probably not appropriate. They had taken pictures at school and made snide comments. And she turned red. You know, she couldn't believe that that she was sort of ignoring that because that was just, you know, the sort of the tone. But you know, my friend was so surprised because she had never gone on Facebook with her daughter. And, you know, it was a big learning experience for, you know, for both of them.
That I think a lot of times we're so busy ourselves, it's actually hard to stay on top of things. And one of our dear family friends, he's a teacher in one of the local schools here. What I really like that Richard does regularly is that in his classes with his grade 7s, he will have them. He's like, okay, show me your device. And he has the history there. And he's like, show me what you've been doing. And he really holds them accountable to how much time have you spent on that? Was that a good use of your time? And they know. So it's not that hidden, you know, those Facebook posts that are inappropriate. They know that at some point, there could be an adult that they trust to be around that's going to see that as well.
Right. And showing an interest in course correcting. You know, these kids don't, you know, a lot of them are my friend's daughter. She was using the platform very innocently.
Yeah.
But it was a nice jumping off point to start a discussion about, you know, what's right and what's wrong. So we're still needing to teach that, even if kids are working on these things independently. So I think one of the greatest tools, especially for this age, is a contract. And you can get them online, you know, very easily. I know Common Sense Media has a good one. The healthychildren.org has them. And you just download the one that you feel fits your family the most, download it and actually edit it to make it even, you know, more specific to your family. But it's great to have on a piece of paper, again, the boundaries of, you know, what the expectation is. You know, to have that moment where you talk about, like, never share personal information. That's critical information. But you really need that focus time, and you need it to be on paper. Different families have different rules. I know a really good friend of mine who the rule for her daughter when she got her cell phone was, if I text you as your mom, if I text you, you must text me right back. And, you know, the first time the child didn't do it, there was a consequence already on the contract. So it was a learning experience. Another thing is, it's a moment to talk about privacy and how important privacy is. You know, we're talking to kids from very young ages about, you know, being, you know, keeping a private space and And that just continues. That conversation just continues. And I just read a very, very succinct thing about privacy, which I loved. It said, treat it like money, value it, and protect it.
What level, especially as they get into the teen years, how much control should we have? How much should we know that they're doing online? And do you have any suggestions around that?
I always say, we know what their school is like. We go to the parent-teacher conference. We try to get to know their friends' parents, but we don't have every conversation, that shouldn't be a part of every conversation that they're having in school or every conversation that they're having online. But again, it's age and a maturity thing.
So what I heard from you so far, because I know we're getting to the end of this, is number one, do your homework. Number two, use a contract, especially if you can, because that's so fabulous. And then number three.
So number three is, again, I'm like a broken record, but model good behavior. It becomes more important as kids grow up. They can smell a hypocrite from a million miles away. So if we're giving them all these boundaries, but we're not exercising those ourselves, that really diminishes the trust. And trust is so important in the entire new neighborhood. The biggest point is, and maybe the most important tip, is to be the go-to adult, that we keep establishing a way for them to come talk to you. And that's a problem. Most kids don't tell anybody when something is whether they've been mistreated offline or online.
On Sundays, we have a tech-free Sunday. We do our best. But there's days where someone's trying to get a hold of me and they've emailed. And so I've come to realize how important it is to say, listen, so-and-so's because they're actually trying to go on a hike with us. Is it okay if I go on? I'm just going on for 2 minutes to connect with them so we can all get together. But in terms of that trust and knowing that I'm also following the rules is such an important one. Susie, this has been so fantastic. Are there any final words that you would like to share?
Just first of all, to thank you, and secondly, to say hats off to all of your parents. This is brave new territory, but but you're doing it, and I think that's wonderful. And just to follow your gut instinct.
Great. Thank you so much, Susie.
Thanks, Kelly.